Welcome to Home Hive. I am Kristen Krebs. I'm here with my co-host, Jennifer Cortez. And today we are interviewing Sid from South Shore Appraisals.
Hello.
Hi, Sid.
How are you? Thanks for having me.
Thank you for being here.
Of course.
So can you tell us a little bit about how you got into appraising?
So appraising. I don't know if I found appraising or it found me, to be honest. I finished like a degree in nursing, and hospitals were not a place for me. And so shortly after that, I still wanted to find myself in a helping position. And a friend of mine was a loan officer in 2002 and says, "Hey, why don't you try appraising?" And I think at that time it was the Yellow Book. So I looked up an appraiser. Am I dating myself here? So I think it was I found an appraiser and I followed him for a day, and I was kind of like, wow, that was interesting. So I directly went right into schooling in 2002. Completed all my courses in 2003. Worked as an apprentice because you have to claim or you have to record about 2,500 hours. So worked as an apprentice under a licensed appraiser, and then in 2005 licensed myself, and then started my own business, my first company with two other appraisers from the office. So yeah.
Wow.
I know.
So to say the least, though, but just so our audience understands, you're not a new appraiser. You've been doing this for a while, and
yeah.
And also super significant is that you've weathered a pretty significant real estate storm, if you will, during the financial collapse in 07, 08. So, I mean, it's a big thing for anyone.
Yeah. I mean, to your point, this is my 17th year actually appraising. And I started out in the Orange County, LA market. This is when the crash happened in 2007, 8, I felt it. We all did. And I was able to weather that storm. I went into a little bit of asset management as an appraiser, which was interesting with Chase Bank, because as you know, they owned Washington Mutual at that time, and it was a crazy experience. But I was able to gather loss mitigation skills as well along the way. And so I had a full actual spectrum of the appraisal and the process of what I do, but also all the parts, whether it's from the loan side to the working with the realtors. And that's when I really got a grasp on the actual real estate industry as a whole, and then started niching out my what I think I wanted to do next with my career. My second career as an appraiser, starting in 2010, is when I went right back into full-time appraisal mode. So yeah.
Wow. And just so that everyone understands, so as an appraiser, what do you appraise? So is it condos, multi-unit, single family, ADUs? Like just tell us, what do you do as a whole?
Thank you. Yeah. So there's two things. There's a licensed appraiser and a certified appraiser. I'm a certified appraiser, which doesn't give me any cap on dollar amount. As a licensed appraiser, if you're searching out there looking for an appraiser and they say they're licensed, they can only do up to $1 million in value or loan amount. And that's huge because in California, I mean, most properties are going to be over that threshold. So certified appraiser, I can do any dollar amount. I've done $20 million, $30 million properties. And I do from single family, which is homes, mobile homes, condominiums, manufactured builds, and then 2 to 4 units. So duplexes to quadruplexes. And I can do commercial up to $250,000, but I've yet to find a commercial property that's worth under $250,000. And so, that's the full spectrum of what I do. Outside of that, I've niched out where I also work with attorneys, whether it's, like divorce or estate planning. We have to do retrospective appraisals because of date of death, and there's properties that people inherit, things of that nature. Bankruptcy, you name it. Anything that has to do with a piece of residential property or real estate, then I'm a part of.
And now more recently, you've been having more appraisal requests for accessory dwelling units, or otherwise known as ADUs.
Yeah.
So can you just share with us a little bit more about your experience in doing that?
Yeah. So to many people, this is, and I would say maybe even in San Diego, this is pretty brand new. These have been going on for about 3 to 4 years all over Southern California. What's inhibited the San Diego market to really take, go full steam with this is because of the impact fees that affected all of us here in the San Diego County, where the numbers used to be approximately $30,000 to put up an ADU. These are just talking fees before you get into permits and things of that nature. And so a lot of people were kind of standoffish on that until they lowered those fees on average to about $5,000. So, but my first experience with these accessory dwelling units was in LA and Orange County markets, especially Santa Monica. Santa Monica is a city where they are very green and very progressive in their construction and their city planning. And that's where I first reached out with an ADU with an investor that was doing purchasing a single family and needed a ARV on the an ARV, sorry, is after repair value, meaning, Sidney, I have an existing home. The proposed construction is going to be an additional home, what they're calling an accessory dwelling unit. And then what would that be worth? And prior to that, we used to just call those dwelling units. Now they're called accessory dwelling units, where there's separate living spaces and kitchens and things of that nature. So all my experience really started about 3 years ago. And once I started experiencing that in Los Angeles, then I started speaking about that here in San Diego, whether as I've done events at UCSD, expos for real estate conventions, things of that nature, and really getting a grasp on what really it is and how one should actually look at it or perceive an ADU, which is essentially a home, two homes on one lot. So
that's awesome. So I know you have a couple of case studies that you were wanting to share with us. So I would love if we might be able to go over some of those numbers to kind of give our viewers at least a better idea of what they'd actually be looking at too.
Absolutely. And I want to, as we show you guys these case studies, this is specific to this property in this city. If you're looking at something very specific to your neighborhood or your property in a specific neighborhood, these numbers may change. And so it's almost as if we're saying, I don't have a specific answer for a general question, but I want you guys to take a look at this because it'll open your eyes to the potential on what your property can bring in. And this first case study that I'm going to show you guys here is in Santee. So if you're familiar with San Diego, this is a city within the East County of San Diego is what we call it, in Santee. And if you look at the numbers, that little home you see in the back, that was the accessory dwelling unit. It was a 1-bedroom, 1-bath. It was roughly around 600 square feet. So if you look all the numbers on the side, the main home was about 1,900 square feet. The granny flat was roughly 600 square feet. And what we're looking at is the rents that a home in this area would receive. So the main home received around $2,650. The granny flat was renting for $1,700. And then if you drop your eyes to appraised value, you'll see $746,000 SCA. SCA stands for Sales Comparison Approach. When you're selling a single family home, you're comparing apples to apples. So what we did is we looked at homes in the area and competing markets, what they were selling for the same product. And then the appraised value for the income approach, because rents are through the roof pretty much everywhere. Anywhere you live, rents are high. So what the income approach gives you is what a home can rent for and what the value associated with that is. And so as you can see, this home, the income that this home brings in was $14,000 more than the sales comparison approach. And then without the accessory dwelling unit, the value that this property would have lost or not have attained would have been roughly around $300,000. So if this home was just a single family house, I probably would have brought it in somewhere around $445,000, not $746,000. And this right here was already an existing structure.
Wow, that's incredible.
And so something else to think about too, just if you're not in the real estate industry, most of Home Hive is geared towards homeowners from an educational standpoint. So another reason why these case studies are so important, I know that you're going to share another one with us in just a minute, is because from an appraisal standpoint, there's no, unlike housing in Southern California, which there's a lot of, whether they're single family, condos, so on, but from ADUs, there's currently less inventory, if you will. Is that correct, Sid?
And I'm glad you brought this up. Yes, there's a lot less inventory in this area, and this is why construction is booming right now for these things. Something to think about is when someone says, well, I live in a specific neighborhood and there are no accessory dwelling units, how would I, as a homeowner, figure out what my investment would be? What is my risk involved? How would one be valued? In this specific area of Santee, there were no accessory dwelling units. There was one accessory dwelling unit actually within the past 18 months back in sales. So what I had to do is use competing sales. In this market, I was using El Cajon, I was using Lakeside, I was using parts of La Mesa to figure out what the difference is between all those markets, but still figuring out in this market in El Cajon, that's a competing market to Santee, what are these selling for? And then utilize differences. If you had a superior neighborhood than your neighbor, then an adjustment would be made for that. So it's important to find a professional that can make the distinction between the two markets, but still be able to locate these, even though if you feel, hey, Zillow doesn't provide me with any information on accessory dwelling units, or my local, realtor may or may not know what's happening in the market. You can still utilize other competing markets in order to figure out how or what your investment will look like if you decided to do something like this.
And so from an appraisal standpoint too, appraisals for ADUs are either, and correct me if I'm wrong, but are done if somebody's going into a property and buying that property as a whole and wants to also put an ADU on it, or it has an ADU, either both, one or the other, or if you already own the property and then you also want to put an ADU on it. So are those both relevant circumstances where there would be an appraisal that needs to be done?
Correct. And so in the appraisal world, we say existing. So if you already have it, it's existing. If you don't have it, but you want to put one on, we call that proposed. So yes, it's going to be existing or it's going to be proposed. If you're saying, well, I have a 2,000 square foot house on a quarter acre, and I would love to put an accessory dwelling unit on this property, what will it be worth if I did something like that? And of course, we would look at present day value for future use. So I'm looking at, okay, what is a snapshot of what's going on today? What can I share with you and build a report on that? And then what is the market trend based on rents that's going to show, well, the rent that you'll receive for this property is going to be X amount of dollars. So yes, it's going to be a little bit of both of those ways, but there's always a way to appraise a property. There's always some sort of contributory value to your improvement. It's just what is the improvement going to be, the size, the specifics of finishes and things of that nature, a lot area ratio, separate yard spaces if that's what you decide to do. Or if you're somewhere in the city where you have an alleyway access, then you can have separate entrances. So, when I say, when you look at a single family with an accessory dwelling unit, really picture yourself living two homes on one lot. You can call it a duplex. You can call it, whatever you want, essentially, but you have to look at it as it's going to be two homes on one property. And the appeal factor on separating spaces, if you have that kind of luxury, will automatically, raise the rent. And when you can raise the rent, so does your income rise as well.
Awesome. Do you want to share that other case study with us?
I do. So this second case study right here, it was in Cardiff. Cardiff by the Sea. This is like a North County coastal property. This ADU right here, well, this isn't the ADU. I just thought it was such a neat photo. I go, I'm going to throw this in my slide. This property, though, was a Spanish style home. And I just love this photo. I keep looking at it. I think I should do something like that in my yard. But it was a Spanish style home, and they were renting this short-term rentals. They were doing Airbnb. And I know this because they go, hey, Sidney, you think you get in and out by 3? And I was like, why? And they're like, because we have someone checking in. I go, oh, no problem. So I know this was an Airbnb rental, but what I want homeowners to understand is as an appraiser and as lenders, they're not accepting short-term rentals. Okay. So we always use traditional 12-month leases rents when we are, when we're analyzing this data to come up with the market value. So it's really important, not because Airbnb or VRBO or all these other avenues, if one person rents it for 300 days out of the year, another for 150, it drastically changes the numbers. So 12-month leases is what we're basing all of these numbers on. The main home here in Cardiff was about 2,400 square feet. The granny flat was a 2-story granny flat at a 721 square feet. And those are the rents. Now, if I go back to the other slide, of course, the rents are way more, but we're talking North County coastal. This was probably, I don't know, half mile from the ocean. So the rents are going to change. So the main home rented at $6,500. The 2-story granny flat was still a 1-bedroom, 1-bath, rented at $2,500 a month. And then if you look at the appraised value for both of these, it came in around $2 million for the sales comparison approach. That's apples to apples. Are there other ones like it in a neighborhood? Yes. What did they sell for? That's where that $2 million value comes from. But again, the income is most likely always going to be higher, because in San Diego or other similar markets of like San Diego, the rents are always going to be through the roof. And so you can see that the rents here were about $250,000 or about $200,000 more in value than the sales comparison approach. One thing that I skipped on the last slide, if you guys look at, it's called gross rent multiplier. It's right above the appraised value of the SCA. It's $250 on that amount. And the way you find that gross rent multiplier for homeowners is you can take a general, the average home sales in your neighborhood, and then divide that by the average rents in your neighborhood. And that's going to give you a gross rent multiplier. And that's important because we use that number to plug in what the total rents are on average coming in for the neighborhood. And that'll give you your value. So that'll give you the value on the income approach of 2.25. But if you also look at the bottom line on income loss without an ADU was about $625,000. Now and that's huge.
And that's over how long when you say that?
I'm sorry?
The income lost without the ADU
is that about $625,000. Yeah.
And is that over a time span?
No, that's if you have an ADU or if you do not have an ADU.
Got it. Okay.
So when you're looking at construction costs and investment, this number plays a big part in that. And I can also speak on something if someone is not East County, someone is not coastal, they're more in the San Diego proper neighborhood and looking for a good investment. I've done about 9 appraisals here in the last 3 weeks in the college area. And in the college area of what makes it a lot different is they rent per room. So on average, you have between $1,000 to $1,200 per room, depending on how close you are to your university. And this could be true to many universities around town. And so a homeowner had an 1,100 square foot single family home, 3 bedrooms, 2 bath, and add an accessory dwelling unit with 3 bedrooms, 2 bath. And so the rents went from $4,000 to $8,000 because of the additional bedrooms that were added and the distance they were as close to the university. So when you have those numbers, the average home in that neighborhood was selling between $520,000 and $570,000 for an 1,100 square foot home. Then we valued, when they completed the ADU, we valued that home at $940,000. So that just shows you the growth. Even if we're using the 570 number, the amount that property grew was nearly $350,000. So that's huge for the investment that you put in for 1,000 square foot could cost you $250,000. You can see the increase already with equity.
That doesn't mean though that you're necessarily spending the $350 to actually get that amount.
No.
Right. So, I mean, that is incredible. But that's also why this information is so needed. It's not necessarily just the homeowners, but even other appraisers, because the quantity right now of ADUs that you can actually then get this information from is, like you had said, is lower. So we're all going to continue learning, both homeowners, future buyers, and then other people that are in the industry. And just so that we know, those are permitted ADUs?
Correct. Okay. These are permitted ADUs. And it gets pretty hairy and sticky when you talk about non-permitted spaces. This is the best time to do a project like this, because the city wants it. They know that we're in a housing crisis and we're going to continue to be. And so this is why the fees originally, where they were closer to 30, I think in San Diego City now, it could be even closer to 3,500. depending on the project. So they are allowing these to go up pretty easily. And as far as parking goes, or some specifics.
Let's just for 1 second, sorry to interrupt you, but this is super significant. And I know we don't have you on to talk about fees, but just this is a reality though of why it makes it, the opportunities are a lot higher right now. So just from a threshold, just from a cost threshold, if you will, if we're talking about fees much higher, they're over 10,000, maybe over 20,000, depending obviously where you are. But you just said that they've dropped. They could be. I'm not saying that they are, but could be under 10,000. The majority they are.
Yeah, essentially they are. Yeah, and they are. And every project is different because you're going to hire your own architect and things of that nature, and those are different fees. But as far as what the city is requiring, and what they call is impact fees. What is the impact on that neighborhood? So the reason why originally it was so much higher is because they were treating it as a new construction without an existing home. So any sort of new construction development, there's an impact fee because they have to tie into the sewer, the electrical grid, and things of that nature. So that's the amount of impact that it's gonna affect the neighborhood. And at first, it was very gray matter as far as, well, how do we treat this? And this is why it's dropped over the years, because the city has done a great job by saying, you know what, we recognize that you already have a home here that's tied in. We're just tying in the second smaller dwelling into the main home or back into the city, sewers and connections. And that's why you see the drop. And this is why you see the increase in activity. And second, though, as an appraiser, everything we do is history, right? We go back for sales. We look back in time. And if you're good enough, you can project based on trends, what's going to happen, right? And so as an appraiser, the more that these are constructed and developed and present, it makes our job a lot easier because now the data is there's not a scarcity in data. Right now, there's somewhat of a scarcity because it's one thing that for someone to put one on their property, it's another for someone to put it on their property and then sell it because that's the data we're using. So now that I've been doing this for 3 years, I'm pulling from different markets, and then looking at trends of location and able to really finite exactly what that adjustment is going to be between whether I'm looking between a Pacific Beach market to Imperial Beach market. If I'm looking University City market to Tierra Santa market, I can really, my team and I have done a great job as far as researching and building case studies per city. So then when you do get a phone call, at least you have a basis on where to start at. And then you can go from there based on the specifics of that property and finishes and plans of the construction.
That's fantastic. So I'm curious, you mentioned finishes a couple times, and being an interior designer, that's my niche. So I'm curious, what kind of finishes have you seen that increase in appraisal value, or vice versa? What kind of finishes might decrease a property value?
Look, I don't want to upset anyone on what they may have on their property. But look, follow the trends. There's always a trend that is happening in real estate. As a homeowner, the best way to know what to do to your property to increase your value, you have to be a little nosy. So if you see that for sale sign in your neighborhood, walk inside and look at the interior of that property. You know what your home is worth. You know what that they're asking for on that sales price. You can put math together and say, look, our home is just the same size. Look at what they've done. And then that's going to give you firsthand knowledge on what the market, and the market means the buyers are willing to pay for. So you can't get emotional about what you like if you're going to sell a property. If it's your home and you're going to enjoy it, yes, make it to your liking. But if you're buying something with anticipation of putting it back on the market, you have to put something that the market wants. And so the best ways to do that, I get the calls all the time. Hey, how much is a pool worth? Is it 50 grand, 75 grand? It's always based on the market. It'll change every month depending on what that buyer's willing to pay for, right? So finishes that I'm seeing is very clean to European style to when you go to your favorite brewery and it's very rustic and simple, right? But I've seen on both spectrums, and guess what? They both work, right? So you really have to, you may want something to match somewhat of your property, the existing home. And so on the interior, as you know, Kristen, you can be the best to say what, it's how someone feels when you walk into the space. Of course, open concepts always work. But yeah, as an appraiser, there's certain homes that I'm like, wow, this is great. Others, it doesn't work for me. But I don't devalue it because it's not my style. I'm basing it on the market. So I'm like, hey, this is a remodeled home. One has Sile stone, one has Caesar stone, one has, another stone, quartz. They're all beautiful stones. And so that's a stone. I can't get into so much tumbled travertine to Carrara marble. I mean, you can go anywhere you want with that. But if it's completed in a workmanlike manner and it looks great and the construction is good, it's going to get a certain value for being remodeled or rebuilt. So yeah. So do what you want, but hire Kristen for that.
Awesome. Well, is there anything else you want to share with our viewers about appraisals?
I would say that vet your appraiser. The more questions you have, the better. Because if you're going to hire someone, you want to know what they know, and something that you don't know. Many of the times, I just like to educate people. Doesn't matter if you're hired or not, because I think once you have the information, then you can decide for yourself. People are pretty smart out there. We all have the tools. Everyone has access to online. You can go to the Pinterest and look at ideas. You can find, everyone is smart, right? So I would say do your due diligence, do your research. And then once you figure out, I think this is what we want to do, then find that person that can match that can hand you some information that you don't know, that can maybe open you up to something or perspective or another way of looking at it, or feed you information. And I think once you pair those two together, you'll make the right decision on going forward.
Awesome. So where can people find out more about you?
I think I'm a little bit everywhere. Of course, you can go to my website. It's southshoreappraisalsca.com. You can find me on LinkedIn, on Facebook, Instagram. I always, anytime I visit a property that is maybe different or there's some issues, I'm all about education. So I'll post a video. Most of my videos are, here's a problem. Here's how you solve it. Here's an issue with your home. If your home is like this and you're getting something your appraiser about to do, you want to fix this because it's going to be a problem. Whether I'm doing historical developments, I'm speaking on to an accessory dwelling unit or coastal properties, whatever it is, I try to feed information out there. So if you find something interesting that I've already posted, I'm on YouTube, comment, send me, your information if you have any specific questions, and then I'd love to engage with you.
Awesome.
Yeah, Sid, thanks so much for joining us for another episode of Home Hive. I mean, if we could stay on for, probably for another couple episodes, there's so much to learn from you, from your experience. But, the biggest thing is, for our audience, whether you're in the industry and whether, you need experts like Sid to help, with different transactions or just help from an experiential standpoint, or, as a homeowner, there's so much to learn. It's easy to be overwhelmed. So just know that you have resources like Sid available here from Home Hive. So thanks so much.
I thank you guys. You guys are kind for letting me be on here. This is great.
Thank you.
Thank you.